What if one animal had all the power to protect millions of lives? And what if that animal was one of the most common birds in the country? That sort of thing happens more than you think. But sometimes you don't realize that until they're gone. China found this out the hard way when they went to battle with the Eurasian sparrow. And by winning the battles, they lost the war. This is China versus sparrows. Hi, I'm Danielle Dufault, and you're watching Animalogic. Today, we're talking about one of the most devastating cases where people tried to eco-engineer ecosystems for their advantage and failed. More than failed, really. They caused an environmental collapse that killed millions of people. The year was 1958. The Chinese government under Mao Zedong launched the Great Leap Forward, a massive campaign aimed at transforming the country from an agrarian society into an industrial superpower. The idea was to boost steel and food production beyond what the West could do. It was a noble goal, but it had one gigantic problem. It included a nationwide sparrow cull. Questions like that really keep feeding our interest in nature and science. We all love to learn more about the world around us, which is why I'm super excited to open this Curiosity Box. Curiosity Box is a subscription service that sends you awesome science-themed toys and t-shirts. Oh, nice. As well as books, experiments, and collectibles. It's a subscription box for thinkers. Cool. Every box is unique and full of amazing items you can't find anywhere else. Let's see what I got. These are 2 optical illusions in one t-shirt. The bezeled effect makes it look like the letters are different colors, but they aren't. And the Stroop effect makes your brain work extra hard to name those colors. It's confusing in the most delightful way possible. There's also this helix-shaped jigsaw puzzle, which tells you the history of life on planet Earth. And let's build this in 1 second. Ooh. And check out these slide rule chopsticks. They come with an inbuilt mechanical calculator. They'll make figuring out the tip easier than ever. A Puzzle Me Twice book, an exclusive book with 70 puzzles most people usually get wrong. And of course, a prism, Isaac Newton's favorite rainbow maker. No, really, we owe so much of what we know about light to this little tool. These are all awesome, and I'm already excited to get my next box. And if you love science, I hope you get yours too. Scan this QR code or click the link in the description and use promo code ANIMA30 for a 30% off discount on your first month of your subscription. And use code BODYDECK to get this awesome deck of cards that gives you a series of cross sections in the human body. It's super fun to shuffle. And even more fun stuff? If you get a yearly subscription, you get these Dennery dice. You know how regular dice have 6 faces? Well, this set has dice with an increasing number of faces, from 1 to 10. I know I'll use them for role-playing games. So scan the QR code and use the promo code to connect with science and spark your curiosity. If you're wondering how the heck the death of sparrows would help them industrialize, you're not alone. After all, sparrows are some of the most common birds across North America and Western Europe. So surely they're not the problem. The argument was that sparrows, specifically the Eurasian tree sparrow, ate too much grain and decimated their farms. These little birds are close relatives of the house sparrow, the adorably pudgy bird you might see around your neighborhood. But this tree sparrow is even tinier than the bird balls that have taken over almost every city in the world. A house sparrow is around 30 grams, or about the weight of an ounce of water. The tree sparrow weighs just 20 grams, which means a cup of tea weighs the same as 12 tree sparrows combined. You can tell them apart by a couple of telltale signs. Tree sparrows have a black patch in their cheek, while house sparrows have solid gray cheeks. A house sparrow also has a gray cap, and the tree sparrow has a chocolate cap. They can eat a wide variety of food. They eat a lot of bugs, especially when they're breeding, to feed the chicks. But they also eat a lot of grain. Which leads us back to the main story. Because of their grain consumption, the Chinese government bunched them up with rats, flies, and mosquitoes as pests to be eliminated in a campaign called, the Four Pests Campaign. You'd think that they'd give it a catchier name. So was their argument legit? Do sparrows really eat that much? Let's do the math. According to the Chinese government, each sparrow ate approximately 2 kilograms of grain annually. Multiplied by millions of birds, officials believed this meant a loss of thousands of tons of grain that could feed many hungry mouths. To a degree, this is plausible. There are billions of sparrows in China, and their total combined grain consumption is massive. But, as we mentioned earlier, their diets are much more varied than what they thought, especially in farmland, where there's plenty of bugs full of juicy protein. And a lot of those bugs they eat are even more voracious crop eaters than sparrows. We're talking locusts, grasshoppers, caterpillars, and beetles. A single tree sparrow can eat over 100 insects a day. When you add up all the grain sparrows save by controlling insects, their grain consumption is actually a net positive. Or in other words, if you have sparrows around, you produce more food than if you don't. Unfortunately, they didn't know that yet. China declared war on sparrows. This campaign against sparrows mobilized nearly the entire population. Schools, factories, neighborhoods, and military units were all enlisted to fight the misunderstood avian foe. The effort was promoted through propaganda posters, public rallies, and newspaper stories, portraying the sparrow as an enemy of the people. The tactics were widespread and brutal. People climbed trees to destroy sparrow nests, smashed eggs, and killed chicks. Children were assigned to guard fields, and competitions were held to see which groups could kill the most birds. One of the most famously cruel strategies was the noise campaign. Citizens gathered in open areas, banging pots, pans, drums, and gongs. This created a wall of noise to keep sparrows in flight by making them too scared to land. The birds would eventually collapse from exhaustion and fall to their deaths. These noise assaults lasted hours, often involving thousands of participants at a time. We spoke with Professor Judith Shapiro, an expert in China's environmental policies and one of the leading experts on China's war on sparrows.
What was fascinating to me about that campaign was the way everybody of a certain age was involved in it. When I was writing a book called Mao's War Against Nature, for that piece of the book, I was simply able to find anybody who was age, say, 60 and over, and ask them if they participated in that campaign. And they all had stories and memories. And those stories and memories were, I would say, in some ways a bit joyful, but also a little wistful, because the little kids were taken off school and the factories were closed and everybody went out together and banged on pots and pans and made great big noises. The sparrows were not able to roost and then they would fall and die, or the little kids were given like the equivalent of a penny for every dead sparrow that they brought in, and you could see trucks driving away full of sparrows. So generally there was this feeling of almost like a holiday to get rid of the sparrows, but then occasionally you met somebody saying, I don't know. There's actually a famous little video clip of the woman that she says, I don't know what the sparrows did to make Chairman Mao so pissed off, she says, and she seems a little sad.
This happened all over the country, and the results were catastrophic. According to official estimates, up to 1 billion sparrows were killed during the campaign. In some regions, the species was pushed to the brink of extinction, and in just a few months, local sparrow populations collapsed across China. At the time, the extermination was celebrated as a major victory. Piles of dead sparrows were displayed in public squares, and individuals were rewarded for their participation. It was an ecological tragedy that would soon turn into a human tragedy. Farmers quickly found out about the super important role sparrows played in farmland ecosystems. Without one of their main predators around, the crop-eating insect populations, especially locusts, exploded. Then they went to town on the farms and devastated them. Locust swarms in particular grew to devastating sizes, stripping entire fields of rice, wheat, and millet within hours. Birds of prey that fed on sparrows declined too. It was a full-on environmental collapse. The timing couldn't have been worse. This happened at a time when other failed government policies had led to food shortages. Ecological and political factors combined to create the Great Chinese Famine, one of the greatest man-made disasters in history. Tens of millions of people died. Some studies show that in areas where sparrows were abundant before the campaign, suffered the steepest declines in food production. Rice production went down by 3%, and wheat yields shrunk by 1.5%. This might not seem like a lot, but since there were already massive food production issues, it certainly worsened the famine. But these kinds of grand events rarely have just one cause. Ecosystems, as well as human politics, are very complex.
To make the connection between the sparrow killing campaign and 50 million unnecessary deaths, I think that's an oversimplification, is that they were still sending large amounts of grain to their friends in Africa, in the third world, global communist solidarity. I think that kind of structural policy is a huge factor. Natural disasters also played some kind of role.
By 1960, the government quietly removed sparrows from the 4 pests list, replacing them with bedbugs as a new target. And having learned about the great importance of sparrows, China even imported sparrows from the Soviet Union to help restore ecological balance and control insect populations.
The famine was not only a famine, a human famine, it was also an ecosystem collapse. Because once there was no food, people were desperately eating anything. So people that I knew very, very well remembered that they used to pull bark off the trees to try to get some nutrition there. We should really think about this famine as not only a human catastrophe, but also an ecosystem catastrophe. The war on sparrows wasn't the only time ideological policies without consideration for the environment has led to human catastrophe. In the Soviet Union, the Virgin Lands campaign tried to expand agricultural production by plowing vast areas of grassland in Kazakhstan, Siberia, and the Volga region. It seemed like a good idea at first, but the project soon backfired. The destruction of native vegetation exposed the soil to wind erosion. This led to enormous dust storms similar to those in the American Dust Bowl. The fertility of the soil declined and harvests collapsed, leaving the USSR with chronic grain shortages. Today, farmers in Asia and North America are attacking pikas and prairie dogs respectively. Prairie dogs are accused of eating the cows' grass and building burrows that might injure the cows. Their numbers are shrinking, and this negatively affects populations of burrowing owls and ferrets that depend on their burrows. In parts of China, the charming inspiration for Pikachu is unfairly considered a modern pest. There's this wonderful little rodent in the highlands of Tibet and the Himalayas called a pika. It's completely adorable. The Chinese are still pouring rodenticide into all of their burrows because they think that the cattle will break their legs if they step in the burrows. But actually, the scientists who study these guys have shown that the burrows create a sponge-like sort of effect on the grasslands, and it's actually really beneficial for water retention, which is very much needed because that's where the headwaters of the major rivers of China, India, Nepal all lie. So this is another example, we haven't learned our lessons on these things.
So please, don't mess with the soil and protect the species that keep our ecosystem in balance. And don't buy into oversimplified narratives where a single species is labeled as an enemy. Complex problems rarely have single species villains or quick fixes. They demand long-term solutions. China's war on sparrows lives on as a cautionary tale. Bold action without science and foresight risks sowing the seeds of its own failure. So what should we talk about next? Please let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for new episodes every week. Thanks for watching. See ya, and take care.